Kia ora koutou, welcome to this panel discussion. Well done for making it out today, despite the severe weather warnings in place for all brave Nelsonians. It's wonderful to have you here today. A warm welcome to our panellists. So today we're going to be covering Zero Waste Society. And we've got four wonderful panellists here who I'll introduce shortly to cover this topic. So I'm Rachel Pemberton, I'm the Climate Change Manager at the Nelson City Council, and this event is part of a series of engagement that we are running on the Climate Change Strategy. The Climate Change Strategy is currently out for consultation, and we're collecting feedback on it. You can submit your feedback either through the Shape Nelson page, or you can simply just whack a post-it note up in response to one of those questions on the board. If you're time poor, that could be the easiest option. We'll still capture that and take it on board when we go to revise the strategy. Feel free to fill these seats in the front. No one ever wants to sit in the front. So this is an informal conversation, so if you need to grab a drink at any point or move around, that's absolutely fine. We're really happy to have you here. So throughout the session, our panellists will explore key actions that businesses, communities and government can take to accelerate the transition to a regenerative, zero waste economy. We'll discuss effective policies, essential infrastructure investments and the role of businesses in fostering a repair and reuse culture. We'll also talk about the power of education and storytelling in shaping how we view waste, not as something to discard, but as a valuable resource. Firstly, I'll introduce our panellists though. So from the end, we've got Zoe Bryce. Zoe is the branch manager at Waste Management, where she's leading sustainable waste solutions. She prioritises safety, environmental care and community engagement, working with businesses and councils to promote circular economy initiatives and innovative waste reduction strategies. Welcome, Zoe. Next, we've got Ben Bushell. So Ben founded and manages Community Compost in Nelson, transforming food waste into valuable resources. With 6 years' experience, he co-designed Bertha, I'm saying that right, isn't it? Bertha, an innovative composting machine. Passionate about sustainability, he consults on composting and waste strategies. Welcome, Ben. Now we have the two wonderful Karens. First up, Karen Lee. She has 50. Sorry, Karen. Yes, that's right. No, we're going this way. We're going this way. Yes, Karen Driver. Thank you very much. Is a zero waste. I email these two very frequently, and I often get them wrong.
Like I said, interchangeable.
But they're both wonderful. So Karen Driver is a zero waste consultant with 20 years experience in community-led solutions for circular economy. Chair of Zero Waste Network, she supports enterprises across New Zealand, Aotearoa. Based in Nelson since 2005, she advocates for waste minimisation and sustainability. And Karen was also part of our climate change advisory group that developed the climate change strategy. And finally, Karen Lee. So Karen Lee, who she has 15 years of local government experience advancing zero waste initiatives. She applies behaviour change science to waste programs, manages battery-related risks, and coordinates nationwide council collaboration on waste, earning a national award for her work. And Karen has recently departed council, which we're very sad about. But you're always around to offer your expertise, and we're very grateful for that. Cool, so how this will run? I'm very ad hoc for my applause, aren't I? How this will run today, so we'll have a series of questions that we put to the panel. Not every panellist is going to answer every question, some will be just for specific members. And then we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for you to ask your questions. We'll also allow comments, because I know there's a lot of expertise within the room on this topic. But if you've got a comment, I'll ask you to just keep that succinct. First up, a question for all of you to answer. And we'll start with Karen Lee on my left. What is one thing we, businesses and individuals, can do to become a step closer to a zero waste society?
I'm going to put my behaviour change hat on the start and say just pick one thing. Whether you're you're a business, whether you're an individual, pick one thing. Yeah, that's my very short.
Good simple message. Karen D?
One thing that I suggest you consider picking is textile waste. It's internationally the emissions from textile waste are larger than the combined international aviation and shipping. So they're massive, and New Zealand's not any better than anyone else, probably worse than many. So if you want to get a clothing item, next item you want to get, just think about it and think, actually, do you need it? Do you have something already in your wardrobe that you can use? And try not to buy more than, like, I think Take the Jump says 3 new items a year. I don't even meet that one, but
Thanks, Karen.
use second hand. Ben?
My invitation would be to learn about Titility and how we can align better with that. And I can expand from that.
I really struggle to work on one, but I worked with this really cool engineer who managed one of our landfills, and he wasn't well liked within our business because he actually went against everything that we did. But his bit of advice was, don't buy anything that you wouldn't throw into the sea. And it sounds a bit dramatic, but just think about the materials that you purchase and making sure that you're buying natural, or buying second hand, or don't buy it at all. That's probably my key outtake.
Great messages. Thank you. All right, second question, and I'll ask Ben this question. What are the most effective policy changes that councils and national government could implement to accelerate the transition to a regenerative, waste-free economy?
Transitioning to regenerative is in line with Titility. And the policy changes that I believe we need is support for the farmers who are transitioning to regenerative farming. So it's less risk for them, because it's high risk for the transition. And for me, from my perspective of the world, I see the main block being towards regenerative being that point where the risk is for the farmers. And if we can change some policy to free that block, then following that comes better crops, cleaner crops, more composting, more recycling. I really see that as the dam, from my perspective.
Could I?
Yes, I was going to say, for the questions, feel free to add the other panellists.
Yeah.
Can I throw something back?
Please. Yeah.
I know that we've all got consultation fatigue, but one of the superpowers of government and local government is our purchasing power, and the change we can create with that. I keep saying our, it's not our now. Local government and central government's purchasing power. There is a consultation open at the moment until the 8th of April, proposing to change the guidelines for government procurement on the Ministry for Environment website, which has essentially dropped things like the Sustainability Development Guidelines. So anybody who is interested, something that we could be doing in the policy space is looking at that and thinking about how government and local government purchases in terms of creating a zero waste society, and whether or not the purchasing guidelines enable them to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Right, the next question, and this one is for Karen Driver and Zoe. How can we encourage businesses and communities to actively participate in reducing waste, increasing reuse, and supporting the repair economy? Zoe, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose I'll go from a business perspective, so it's engaging with a waste service provider and getting them on site. But a waste service provider is the ambulance at the bottom of the hill, so it's really looking about, holistically your entire business and what you're doing. So what you're bringing in, and again, do you need to buy it? Is there a better way that you can do it? Is there a way that you can design it out of your process? And then kind of looking at, basically the whole trail through your entire business, and then engaging a waste service provider to be the ambulance at the bottom of the hill to find solutions for those materials. End of life would be my thoughts.
Thank you.
This can- it's, to me, it's all about engaging with the community, and that's the business community as well as everybody. It's all one community basically, and you're not going to get buy-in and change from within the community unless people understand what the issue is and what they can do about it. And councils get a lot of kickback from the community for like removing waste bins and all this sort of stuff, which we need to do that sort of stuff, but they don't understand why, and so they kick back and they get angry, and then they're never going to engage. So there needs to be more. Doesn't necessarily need councils to be communicating. It's probably more in supporting local community hubs and local businesses to actually communicate with the people that are in their
Any other thoughts from Ian or Karen? You've got some thoughts.
When have I ever not got thoughts? We have businesses both locally and nationally who are doing awesome work in this space and getting better at telling their stories so that other businesses feel safe to try out new things is a really important thing. So I would appeal to all our storytellers, find those stories and tell them. Because particularly in the current climate, it's very difficult to be innovative sometimes when you're moving into an area that's perceived as being less well supported. So tell the stories.
Thank you, that's a great message for council or anyone else in a communications role that has an outreach Chamber of Commerce as well. The power of storytelling is fantastic. We've tried to use that approach in how we engage in the climate change strategy. So these personas up there on the banner, so kind of show don't tell approach of leading by example. Thank you. All right, next question, and this one is for both Karens. What types of infrastructure and investment are most urgently needed to support waste reduction, resource recovery and circular economy initiatives?
It's investing in our communities, I think. It's all part of what I was talking about in the last one. It's like we've got great community hubs in this region, in Nelson. There's Victory, there's Tahunanui, there's Nelson Environment Centres. Habitat for Humanity is a great community hub. And yet they really struggle to be able to do anything really, because they don't have the investment in there. I'm part with Carlo of running the Repair Cafe, and yet every year we get, when we get funding, it's once a year. It's really hard to get, and it's just like so hard to do anything really.
I'm going to segue from that if I may.
No. Yes, okay.
So as councils, there is massive investment, for example, in recycling.
Yeah.
Now recycling is important. You need to recover resources. You need to get as much use out of them as possible. It's still effectively linear rather than circular. Imagine if we had similar investment in reuse. In terms of infrastructure, what Karen says I support totally. Community resource recovery is critical and supporting that is critical. But imagine, for example, investing in, the Cheer Sisters came to me a few years back asking whether there was any way that we could investigate or develop reusable courier bags. Now, courier bags actually needs to be a national approach. So talk to NZ Post, it wasn't on the radar at the time. But imagine if we were starting to support scalable, national and regional solutions for reuse. That's what gets me excited. And recycling, don't get me wrong, recycling is really important. recovering resources is really important. But at some point, the use of virgin fossil fuel to make packaging has to give way to reuse. It really does. So my question about infrastructure that we could invest in would be that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we need to turn the tap off of waste,
Mm.
rather than just, as Zoe said, deal with it at the end of the life. We actually need to stop generating it.
Mm.
And that needs investment in those solutions, as Karen said.
Mm. I'm going to go a bit off script here because we haven't really talked about composting, and we've got a compost expert on the
Oh yeah.
So the central government has recently diverged away from curbside, mandatory curbside composting, which is a real shame in my opinion. Where does that leave us in terms of composting? Do you think there's any way local government can step in, or businesses to provide better organisation for composting?
Yeah, it's pretty devastating that central government have divested from this. It's taken the wind when
I'll
you.
answer that in a minute.
Yeah, okay, Karen's probably better answering the big ones. I would say I'm experiencing, and my community are experiencing, the ripple effect of central government turning their energy away from it, feeling unsupported by central government. I feel like I'm experiencing people following suit, moving their energy away from composting, and as that ripples down to community scale, it's less, it altogether feels less supported, despite probably being a cherished and valued organisation, ours in particular, and also initiative. I feel like, support has really ebbed away, and I'm not sure really how to really refocus that. I think there's a lot of power in local and central government just voicing their support and showing a support for initiatives, because they're essentially leaders, they're leading us, and we look up to them for decision making and for policy and for ideas. And I know that the community I work with would love to be championed more, acknowledged more, and supported more, even in small tokens, for the work they do. Many people showing up week after week after week, putting in the hard work, and there's only so much I can say well done to them, or thank you to them, or show my personal minute gratitude. But if the community can show up and say thank you from local government, championing the people that are on the front line, I feel like, okay, so after all the things I've just said, we can distill that down to perhaps just champion the people that are getting their hands dirty.
Quick question then, what happened, there was a waste minimisation fund application for a community compost network across the country. Did anything come of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it evolved into something super beautiful, and it's in its first pilot year now, which is being overseen by Karen.
Yeah, Zero Waste Networks.
Right. Good to
Part
know.
of the Kahui running it. It's a utility-based project, and it's beautiful.
How do we find out about that, Karen?
Sorry?
Where do we go to find out about that?
That's a good idea. I can send you some
Okay.
information.
Yeah.
It's in its sort of infancy, and the idea is that it builds the business plan to prove the worth of distributed composting within communities. And I think what we need with the climate strategy, linking back to the climate strategy, we need to make sure actions are in that plan to just get on with it in this region. And we've got Ben and Community Compost, which is such an asset to this, to Nelson, and thought very highly of nationally as well. And there's lots of Ben type composting around the country, and that's what this project's about. It's all about, well, let's everybody work together, and we can prove that that's the way. And obviously at the top of it is actually we need to stop wasting food.
Yep.
Just a quick thing, following off that, because if there isn't curbside collection, what can I'm just thinking about Ben, because I do know what you do, but maybe not everyone. What is it that individuals can do with our compost if we don't have a place in the house? How can we actually get it to you or be part more of that group?
I haven't paid her to ask this question, but I'll take this opportunity to say we're just launching a drop-off service.
Oh, nice.
So
Thank you.
on Saturday mornings you'll be able to come to the gardens and drop off your compost.
It's a very good website.
It is. I'm part of his group. That's why he said he didn't pay me for the question. But I just thought other people might be interested, because I know I will be doing compost and I don't want to do it at home. I can take it along, but maybe that's good to know that that's what you're going to be doing.
Some very quick context, Billy, because of your question. In terms of things like composting and food waste, the government launched a waste strategy in 23 with all sorts of interesting actions in it, including mandatory food waste collections. 3 weeks ago, they replaced that strategy with a new one-page strategy, which no longer has. It's a good basic working strategy. It's got some glaring gaps in it. It doesn't have those mandatory actions anymore, but has stated a commitment to diverting food waste through things like the Waste Minimisation Fund. However, we know that's not a great solution. So micro solutions are also a really important part of this at local government level.
Yeah.
And just want to pick up on Jen's point about celebrating and recognising community leaders. So we're looking for examples of community projects to put in our action plan. We've got a section that we're going to fill in on community actions, and we would love to have one of them on community compost. So yeah, talk more about that.
And it's also builds community, so that investment in those community hubs is really important.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
classic example of building community.
Cool. I've got just one more planned question, and then one question adaptation advisor asked us to ask about disaster waste, so I'll come to that. And then we'll open up to to questions from the audience. So this question is for Karen Lee, Ben and Zoe. What role do education and storytelling play in shifting societal mind shifts towards valuing waste as a resource, and how can we make these narratives more impactful?
Do you want to say that first, Zoe?
Yeah. I went to a Master Builders talk, and I was talking around what you can do in the C&D space for diversion opportunities. And there was this old boy there that sat there and went, like, why on earth do I care? You know, like, why would I bother? I've always just put it in a skip, and I was like, this is my Greta moment. Like, you've got to take these opportunities where you can. And I was like, do you have children? And he's like, yes. And I was like, well, one day your children's children are going to sit on your lap and they're going to ask you, as their world is burning, why you did nothing when you knew better. And he like sat there like, really, shut up. And then we went through the presentation, and there's just so much opportunity, but you've just got to know about it. And I think that for him, it wasn't ignorance, it was just a lack of education. So, you know, education plays such a key part in it. So it's, if you don't know, ask. It's, you know, Karen and Ben is talking about that storytelling. You know, so every single person in this room needs to go home and tell 20 people about what community compost do. Tell their story, you know, so we can celebrate the amazing mahi that this group of people are doing in the community. But from a business perspective, it's just, don't be afraid to ask questions, engaging with all of the awesome people in this room or on this panel, and asking, because you don't know what you don't know.
Thank you.
Ben,
Yeah.
you want to have a crack?
Yeah, storytelling's great. I love storytelling. I'd like to kind of bounce off your comment on just spreading the word. Like, I feel that the value in prioritising certain topics in conversation, instead of perhaps leading with the weather, perhaps leading with something we did at the weekend that was really cool. Because we only seem to have so much time to have conversations with people, and I feel like we do have a choice in what we talk about. So whatever's important to you is a really great way to lead, and can lead to deeper connection as well.
So yeah, storytelling, you've probably gathered by now, it's one of my favourite topics. There's a reason behind it. Anybody who's interested in the science around behaviour change, which is a term I hate because it sounds like brainwashing, but one of the really key concepts is social diffusion. You are far more likely to be interested in doing something if somebody you relate to is also interested and values this thing. So to me, that's really where that sits. Education is about removing barriers, so providing information. It's a useful tool, but what it's really about is actually showing where your values and someone else's values are called, and you can create something or make a change or take an action that you really want to take. I'd add a caveat in all of this though. We're all very committed and really interested in this topic, and many of us are lucky enough to have the time and the resources to take action. Many people might like the sound of all the actions you can take, but have neither the time nor the resources. So whilst a lot of this has been about individual action, it's really important not to overlook the need for change at those upper levels to enable change.
Yeah.
Because it's unfair otherwise to expect somebody to go to a refillery rather than use a plastic container when they're barely managing to make enough time to get everyday life working. So really never lose sight of the intersection between equity and resources.
Well, and also I think if voluntary efforts were going to change the world, they'd have done it by now. So we actually need regulation. It's just the only way it's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
Plastic bags are a good example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we get regulation when the community is passionate about something. So that's storytelling, and then putting pressure on and voting accordingly.
Thank you. Disaster waste, I want to ask about disaster waste, and hopefully this isn't going to become very relevant soon. And if I think about the 2022 floods, Karen and I both live up in Beachfield Crescent, and we looked down on a flat area that was used as the dumping ground for sediment, and then I'm not sure where it went, probably into
I could talk
areas.
to this in great
Great. Yeah, so it's a massive concern when we have disasters. We produce a lot of waste, and we need systems in place to deal with it. So yeah, Karen, any comments about what we need to do about disaster
So
waste?
disaster waste is something that's going to affect us more and more frequently, and this goes across things like, for example, what happens if the landfill's cut off? What happens if the tank farms are damaged? What do you do if we have a power cut for a whole week and we have 10,000 households with rotting waste in their freezers and fridges? It's health risks, it's logistical, it's resources, it's a really, really large area, and there is very little resourcing to actually plan for this. So up until very recently I was part of, at the national and local level, part of the discussions about this, and there is hopefully going to be a national template for local government to plan. But one of the delightful things in local government is you are also an emergency worker. So we try, not we anymore, but anyway, we try within our everyday jobs to fit in all that planning and all that preparation. Cultural considerations, it's all very well going, oh my gosh, we've got 300 tonnes of contaminated sediment from sewerage. You can't put that on land of cultural significance. Where are your sites going to be? Are you ready? Have you got an alternative route to get out and out of the landfill? How are you going to handle these different wastes? How are you going to handle households who have all got damaged whiteware that's actually got synthetic refrigerants in it, which are hundreds of times more damaging to the environment than other greenhouse gases? So there's a massive amount of planning that needs to go into disaster waste management, and not enough resource, to the best of my knowledge, at this point in it. And it's something that our civil defence aren't equipped with additional resources to do education in this space, and I think it's something that would benefit everyone to be thinking about, as well as considering actually the impacts of climate change in how it causes this, both in terms of adaptation, what's going to happen with sea level rise in our wastewater plants, and in terms of mitigation, what are we going to do so that even if somebody builds, I don't know, a wall to keep the sea back, which isn't a great solution, by the way, in 50 years' time that wall will be useless, because we haven't actually done the work. You can't separate the two, they go together. Sorry, that was my little disaster waste management rant.
Well, I can probably add a little bit. So I've just updated my climate change business continuity plan recently, and my emergency management plan around essentially what will happen with climate change. And we've taken a lot of learnings from what happened following the earthquakes and some floods in Marlborough and Auckland, and encompass that as much as we can. And you know, while we have a million contingencies, it's just there's so much that's so unknown. So it is just around. It's kind of like when you plan your earthquake preparedness kits with your families. It's going home and talking about what will you do. So yeah, say if the power's out for a week, what will you do with your food? What how do you support your community? How do you help everyone? But from a business perspective, I think every business should be looking at a climate change business continuity plan. It's super important.
Yeah, totally.
Can I just say something? I was involved in some of the clear up after Kaikoura, and on the ground in Kaikoura, and then I worked with council there to start developing a plan, and I'm not sure where it went to, but we had support from Canterbury as well, from ECAN, and but it's just like we've been there, we've done that, and all that knowledge from those things needs to be fed in. There needs to be a process where all the learning,
in theory.
Oh, in theory, but MFE's getting ditched as well.
Just to give you an example, in Gisborne after the cyclone, they had some 20,000 households, off the top of my head, with fridges and freezers full of rotten food and no internet to communicate. So they had to have in stock sufficient high-grade transparent plastic bags to collect all the rotten food. And they actually had to physically go neighbourhood by neighbourhood, letting each neighbourhood know when their drop would be. And only that neighbourhood, not telling everybody else, because otherwise everybody else would have just rushed straight in with all their waste as well. And collect all that food waste and get it disposed of so it wasn't a health risk. So yeah, it's huge.
If we invest in decentralised composting, that would never be a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally agree.
Great. Okay, so we have just over 10 minutes for questions or comments from the audience. So does anyone have any questions or comments? Yeah, JP.
I'm just thinking about the wonderful work that the community compost does and things, and you mentioned sort of community initiatives, but for me the most important element of that is that community, and I think what Ben's done, what other groups have done, is really, and you as well, all these little initiatives that we do, what it does do is bring people together, and when disaster does strike, we do have these little networks of people there that that can communicate and do know what's going on. So I guess it's just a comment and a well done to the groups that are set up, and how useful that's going to be in the future, I think.
And on that subject, can I just say the amazing person sitting over there is
Yes.
Joanna Jones of Grassroots Recycling.
My question is, how do we educate our teenagers to think about what they're doing to landfill? My observation is that they have no idea. They're not thinking about the end of all the stuff they buy. And I really do worry about that. And they just look at me as though they say, what are you talking about? And I feel that that they need to understand what we're doing to our environment just by buying something and then being chucked out. I mean, even vapes and all that stuff, there's no concept that they understand this. And in my own personal experiences, I go to Mitre 10 because I have just a townhouse. I need to buy compost. I know, terrible word, sorry. But also potting mix and stuff that, from my own garden. But Mitre 10 won't take back the empty bags. And so what do? That's just an issue. I feel that some businesses need to take some responsibility for the thousands of things they're selling. And I want to know how we can do it. I went to Mitre 10 and do take compost bags. No, we don't. I said, well, what do I do with them? You just throw them away. It makes my mind just go into spin because I feel that's something we could possibly do. I mean, this is a big business, Mitre 10. We're talking to the converted here.
I can answer both.
Yeah, both yes, there's two parts to it.
Yeah.
How we educate
That's
teenagers
right.
and
Yeah.
corporate responsibility.
How we educate teenagers, first of all. So thinking about the slightly younger people, a very wise woman called Sarah Lange once said to me, children should be neither warriors nor warriors. Change starts at home. Us as adults modelling the right behaviours has to absolutely be the first place that they're going to see it. The second part of that is if you want to talk to teenagers, you need to speak their language. None of us live on TikTok or whatever, but social diffusion. Teenagers will really be interested in messages from people they relate to, and that's really where that's got to sit. So that's a whole different massive topic. Now, in terms of voluntary product stewardship, which is what you're talking about, there are so many materials that businesses could be taking back. There really are. And there are some changes that are happening. Agricultural, soft plastic wrap, and so on. Mitre 10 is actually taking back polystyrene.
Yes, I saw that.
Plant pots and so on.
Great.
To be fair to businesses, they cannot do it all. Mitre 10 are also doing some really good work with construction and demolition waste, and are actually leading change in that space. I'll go back to my favourite topic of social diffusion. When a business sees other businesses doing things, they will start doing it. Because there isn't really going to be much in the way of mandatory product stewardship, as in businesses being obliged to take products back. So customer interest, telling their stories, customer demand is what leads those changes.
So I do go back to Mitre 10 and see what do we think, what we do with these plastic bags.
Yeah, keep asking the question.
I would say buy your compost from Ben.
Oh, that's it.
Yes.
And stick all your bags in their bins.
Yes.
Well, I think you've kind of covered what I was going to say, but it is essentially on that product stewardship piece. So it's you think, those businesses such as Mitre 10 have a responsibility, but the manufacturers are the ones that really need to take ownership for what they're making. So rather than just contacting Mitre 10, I'm sure on the back of your compost bag there'll be the manufacturer. So communicate to them that you're discussing what they're doing.
And you've been doing really good work trialling plastic wrap for the building industry as well. But there's all sorts of really interesting things happening.
Good. Yeah.
And it's also key players like the waste service providers who are part of this.
So what I do is I just wash the bags up and stick them in the soft plastic, so I'm sure I'm not doing the right thing.
No,
it's soft plastics, that should be fine.
So you're okay.
Yeah, but I would still communicate to that manufacturer about what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Back to Polly next.
Try and get the quick. So, I work as a sustainability coordinator at Cawthron for the labs, and so I've got a lot of business-to-business stuff going on with waste streams from customers giving us lots of single-use plastics. And how can we make it easier for some of those big agriculture businesses to become a bit more circular in our community? Because I'm a team of one, and it's pretty hard going. I mean, it's a similar, like Karen was saying, I guess it is a tough one because there's very little policy for them to incentivise any circular processes. Any thoughts on big agriculture businesses in Nelson and how to kind of systems change for them?
I work with the largest agriculture businesses across the country, and I would probably approach it by talking to their sustainability or their procurement teams.
Yeah, I have, and haven't
Okay,
got very
go
far
higher.
with some of them. I do go
Or,
higher.
this is probably not the one I should say, but like embarrass them, make it public, talk to people about what they're doing, and then they basically have to change.
Yeah.
I know it's really hard when you're coming from a business lens, and this is
I'll
quite
have to talk to my,
controversial, but
might talk to my comms advisor on that one. I might get
absolutely.
blacklisted.
But you know, like Doug from Sealords was just having coffee down the road, so why don't you email him and go, look,
Sure.
this is what your business is
Sealord's
doing.
great. It's
But
a few of the other
other
businesses
businesses are just
are the ones.
But
Okay.
yeah, so try
Interesting.
different avenues. If it doesn't work, then
Okay.
keep pushing.
Yeah.
Because people have to change, and big
Yeah.
businesses need to make a
Because
difference.
it's sort of like it ends up with greenwashing. One
Yeah.
side they're saying some great stuff, but then
Yes.
in the factory it's really not happening.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I forgot who you work
I
for.
work for waste management.
Waste management. So that's not Enviro Waste. It's a different one.
different.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll talk to you another time.
Sounds
Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Cheers.
And Polly?
So we were talking about top-down change as well, and thinking about what can happen from government angle. And I just wanted to put a comment about the right to repair bill that's going through. So it's being consulted on at the moment, and it's up. I think it closes today.
It does.
So it's about, if that goes through, essentially it means that our products and packaging will be able to be repaired, in particular e-waste. So it's about designing out products that just break, and it's this planned obsolescence. So trying to create that change and in line with what's happening over in Europe. So, and I think the Repair Cafe has been coordinating it all. So there's submission guides and heaps of things that you can use, and there's templates. So it shouldn't take too long to put a submission in on something like that. I still need to.
Yeah, Zero Waste Network's website, there's guides.
Can I say on submissions as well, we've all got a little bit of submission fatigue, there's been a heck of a lot of them. If all you do is open up the submission, say, I don't support this, and hit
Yeah.
send,
It gets counted.
Well,
Or not.
potentially.
Well,
So
Definitely not.
conscious of time, we've just got two. Yeah, sorry, we had a lot over here as well. If we can make them brief, we can take two if everyone's
A
the
very
ending
quick
colour
one.
next.
I had no idea you existed. How should I have known?
The council.
This place.
Oh, cultural conversations. Yeah. So this is they're kindly letting us use this space. So they're not a climate change organisation. Yeah.
are you on Facebook, Billy?
You must be joking.
That's it.
basically.
No.
Cultural conversations have a lot of great events and things. Mostly it's advertised on Facebook, but someone else might.
Their website is pretty up to date as
Yeah,
well.
website.
Yeah, they've got an events page on their website.
But I didn't know it existed.
Ah.
We're talking about education,
Yeah.
and education means that people in the community know things
I
going
think
on.
it points to our still strong reliance on Facebook, Billy, which is a whole different conversation.
Well, I don't know, I'm with you. I wouldn't know about this going except I know people are involved, and I'm quite new to the community. Unless you can walk past or are on Facebook or know people involved, you don't know what's going on here. I've only just moved back for a month ago, and I've been very conscientious about getting in touch with things, but so many people, unless you have your nice big posters, climate action on poles outside or something, there are so many in the community who aren't on tech, who aren't hooked into various systems that maybe we all are, and it really, that education can be done in a different way to reach out to people who wouldn't normally find things. And that's the tough part, I agree with you.
Yeah, sorry, we've got we had lots of hands over here, but we've run out of time. So, Carlo, I know you had your hand up for a while, so we'll just take Carlo's question, and then we'll be around. I don't know about the panelists, whether you need to duck away immediately, but we'll be floating around, so feel free to come up and chat.
Can I just make one point after Carlos?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, my question was actually a pretty big top-down question, where we are with landfill fees, what the panelists think. Are they right? Should they go up? The whole thing with equity around that. And maybe looking a little bit beyond the horizons, other countries, other areas in the world have maybe organic to landfill bans, or at least food waste to landfill bans. I think we should be getting there.
Mm.
Yeah.
Probably most of you would like that up.
Yeah, landfill fees need to go up. The evidence overseas is clear that drives change. But the whole equitable, that needs to be considered as well. But there needs to be solutions basically, and we need to stop generating waste, and then you don't have to pay for it, and people need to be helped to do that.
There's a will.i.am quote, waste isn't waste until it's wasted.
Okay, we'll just go back to the panel. Any final remarks before we close off?
Deposit return scheme. I know I've got my champion here. It's an issue that the government is still considering, and if we want a deposit return scheme on beverage containers, we need to be actually making sure that we're talking about it to everybody. It's basically, when you buy a beverage, you pay 20 cents. It used to be here. It works internationally. The evidence is all there. Government's got all the information they need. 20 cents, you can claim that back when you deposit the container back. It builds a resource of, you can then build in systems for reusing those containers. It just has so many benefits, but we need to be talking about it. We need to make sure that people talk about it and lobby.
What's a more common name rather than?
Or container return scheme.
Deposit return scheme, bottle deposit scheme,
Yeah.
container deposit scheme, there's lots of names for it.
Yeah.
But
it litter, all sorts of stuff.
And all of the resources for that is on Zero Waste Network's website, Facebook page, Instagram. There's webinars and fact sheets, so there's trying to distribute information on it.
For those who read the newspaper.
Yes, and it's in there too. Yeah, it's in the newspaper, and there'll be one coming up about another webinar at the end of this month in the newspaper.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments from panelists before we close off? No. Okay.
No,
Well,
my parting shot was the waste.
thank you. Sorry we haven't had a chance to get to everyone's questions and comments, but thank you so much for coming and for your engagement today. And big thank you to the panelists for sharing your expertise. And a final plug to make the submission on the climate change strategy. If you haven't already done so, or whack a post-it note up on the wall.
And
So
the right
until
to
the
repair.
17th